We
So,
yes, we are moving
so
along.
we are moving along. Welcome, everyone. And I just want to say how I've really been looking forward to today. You know, you're here with Live with Marcy and Amy, the heart-centered woman. And today we have a very important subject. We're going to be talking about becoming empowered with self-forgiveness. And this, by the way, is a subject that is near and dear to both Amy's and my heart. We're going to learn how to cut out all the noise, silence your inner critic, and break free of the chains of old patterns of self-sabotage. So, having said that, I do again want to welcome everyone who is here. And please, if you would like to, just say hi in the chat. And those who are listening to the replay know that you're just as important to us as those who are here with us live. And if you are here live, know that if you have your camera on, that you are going to be part of this recording that is distributed all around the world. So you can make that choice for yourself. Having said that, I have to say, Ames, so happy to be here with you. What do you want to start with? You want to start by talking about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Amy Shade. If you don't know me, I am a woman's life coach. I am the creator of the Radical Embodiment Method. And it's really, I think my teaching and my coaching and is really about bringing you back to yourself, to really bringing you back to, you know, what's important to you. And this concept of self forgiveness is so personal. It's all about you. You really cannot deflect or reflect or give your power away on this one. This is all up to you. And so this is very exciting for me because I love learning about myself. I love when people who are discovering things about themselves that they've never really realized, and then how do you really use that tool in their life. And self-forgiveness, I think, is a very important tool to have in your life. And so that's what I do. I support women in really getting back to yourselves and themselves, or whatever your pronoun is. And you can and to really embrace this journey, to really embrace this journey that we are all on together, the collective. And so that's a little bit about me. Marcy, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Marcy Newman. I'm known as the Heart Shift Coach, and heart shifting is something that you're going to learn a little bit about today. But that is a process that I've created through the 50 plus years of my work with helping people to heal their hearts. And today we're talking about self forgiveness, which actually is a very important aspect of heart shifting. And so this is the process and the work that I do with women all around the world. And I specifically work with women. I was called into that, I call it my ministry, actually, about probably 20 years ago, when I really just zeroed in on this. And my work is in self love. And as you're going to find out, self love and forgiveness are really sort of a marriage made in heaven, you might say. And so the work that I do is one where I not only support women in cultivating the courage that it takes to love themselves, but also to create a self love lifestyle. Creating a self love lifestyle is something that takes practice. We're not accustomed to it. And if you've been following Amy and I, you know that we often talk about the influences in our lives from the conditioning that we received as children. And so, this ability to create a self love lifestyle is a reprogramming of sorts. And again, we're going to be talking about so much of this today, so I don't want to spend too much time here. But I do want to, again, thank anyone who is here today. I give you so much credit. As Amy said, when we reach for what it is that we need, I mean, there is something really magical that happens. And so kudos for being here. And for those of you who are listening to this in the replay. So, with that, I would like to start us off with, I actually have two quotes that I've identified with for today. One of
Before
them,
we go on, that was
oops,
one thing I want to say is that this
yeah,
is Live with Marcy and Amy, and this is we do a monthly live every third Thursday of the month. We want to put that in the beginning just in case you didn't know that. And we are here to, serve you and to really offer a new theme each month that really relates to your life, like real stuff, right? Real
right,
stuff that you can really incorporate in your life. I just wanted to put that in there and
sure,
go into the quote.
yeah. Okay, so this first one is by K.J. Hilton. I don't know who that is, but it's a wonderful quote, very simple. No one can or will ever feel your pain as much as you. Forgive yourself for the past. Seize the gift of the present moment. And we're going to be talking about how powerful that is. And then one more thing by Albert Schweitzer. This I just thought was so lovely. Just as white light consists of colored rays, so reverence for life contains all the components of ethics: love, kindness, sympathy, empathy, peacefulness, and the power to forgive. So I think that sort of exemplifies how Amy and I look at all this, because we do see it as a power, a
Yes.
superpower, actually, right?
Right. Of course. And
Yeah.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right in
Yeah.
because this subject is very fascinating
Hmm.
to me for many reasons. But so I'm going to ask you, Marcy, what
Sure.
do you think forgiveness is? And how did you come to this perspective?
Okay. So, for everybody listening, if you don't know, my focus is typically on energy. And so I look at forgiveness as an energetic process. And when I look at it, I see that it is just filled with light. I see it actually as a metabolic process that is an aspect of self love. So, forgiveness, when we are willing to see things as they are, to let go of the energy that is preventing us from staying in a high vibrational frequency, we actually have created alchemy. We have transmuted energy. We have taken it from a dense energy that was very heavy, right? We feel the energy of unforgiven experiences as a heaviness, particularly around our heart. And what that does is it weighs us down. So we are not filled with the light in the way that we're meant to in order to live this life and show up full on. And so, forgiveness to me is this recalibration of energy in the same way that self love is, in the same way that heart shifting is. We're reaching for a higher vibrational frequency so we can let go of what I call the cement shoes. So, how this came to be for me in particular, I think was very evident for me after my divorce. And I created quite a, um, how can I say this? Quite a shock that was felt around the world when I left my husband. And people could not understand what that was all about. And I kept finding myself trying to justify it by pointing the finger at him, right? Pointing out all the reasons why I left and left my marriage and actually walked away from everything that had defined me for almost 30 years. And I'm telling you, it's like, you know, I believe that we have this team of um, guides and healers that are working with us all the time. And it was like every single time I would be, like all huffed and puffed up and pointing those fingers, there'd be a voice. Why did you let that go on so long? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? So, in other words, what would happen is every time I would try to, pass the buck, there were these voices in my head that would say to me, hmm, you know, you had a choice there. And I kept hearing that. You had a choice there. You had a choice there. And then, of course, I would have to justify to myself why I didn't have a choice. But I did have a choice every step along the way. And so that's really how this grew for me, how I became so aware that forget about trying to forgive him. I needed to forgive me for all the times that I had, number one, denied myself the power of my own choice. And number two, I acquiesced that power. In other words, I would give that power up and then wonder why I was angry, wonder why I was resentful. So I started to put these pieces together where I recognized that no matter what was happening outside of me, there was only one place that I needed to go. And that was for me to identify where I had separated from my true self, from my power, and from what I see as my source, the source of all that I am. So that's really how it came to be for me. And I have to tell you, quite miraculous, and we'll get into it more. But I wanted to ask you, Amy, I know that you believe that self forgiveness is so important to a person's healing journey. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, thank you for that. Sorry, I'm having a lot of there's a lot of animal activity in my realm right now. Um, but yeah, so it's interesting because I talk about this oftentimes in my journey is that I grew up an atheist, and we forgiveness was never part of the conversation. Like I never really even thought about forgiveness. And it's interesting because I had to learn about forgiveness and learn about what that means for me. And I had found that forgiveness for others wasn't has not been my main focus. There's something about when you are on this journey, when we are on these journeys of self-discovery and spirituality or whatever transformation we're going through, we realize that everyone is on their own path and everyone has their own lessons to learn. And so I often find that it's a bit, you know, futile to try to forgive someone else. I find it more empowering to forgive myself and my choices, like you said, my choices in that situation. But it's not only choices, because sometimes I'm going to share a story after this, but as young kids, there are moments in our life that we might remember as a young child that we are pointing the fingers at the people who maybe didn't give us the love we needed or wanted, who maybe abandoned us or who hurt us even, right? And there's something in those moments that I'm going to talk about this, that we could bring up and really get into self-forgiveness, which is very powerful. It's a very powerful exercise. And so it's like you said, if we do not enter self-forgiveness as a ritual, as a happening, as something that's normal in our life, we do have those regrets, that shame, that guilt, those low energies that are constantly pulling at our heart. That's exactly where they're living. They're living in our heart because we feel we have yet to clear them. We have yet to reconcile those moments. And so self forgiveness, I think, is one of the most important aspects of the healing journey, especially for women, because we are so heart centered. Even though we've been trained not to be heart centered so much, but to give away everything, but we are heart centered. We do feel a lot. We do have emotions that we like to express. Oftentimes we want to be that person who can express love freely, who can open their heart to people, who can really be themselves in their strengths, which are our feminine strengths. And so self-forgiveness needs to be there more than, in my opinion, forgiveness for others. And so let me see what you said. Yeah, I mean, the inner critic will come up. Yeah, as soon as you get to self-forgiveness, there is a peace and there is an alchemy of energy. It just kind of like eases your life. And this is what women need oftentimes, is this peace to really clear this high level of anxiety we feel about our life. A lot of us feel that way. We feel there's high anxiety, there's high fear, there's high levels of anger and just, frustration oftentimes. And so, really healing the self and really forgiving yourself is powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that, I'm going to ask, I know this is so what is this relationship between self-love and self-forgiveness?
So I actually believe that you cannot have one without the other. That self-forgiveness is such an intricate part of self-love because it is the journey, actually, where we do go from living in our head, which is where all of that incrimination is taking place, right? All the guilt, all the blame, all the finger pointing, all of the self uh, deprivation, all of the self, incrimination, all of that is happening in the head. And so, as we're on this self love journey and we are coming to know ourselves as worthy and deserving and remembering that we are divine beings, we must forgive ourselves for having forgotten that. Because it's in the forgetting of our worth, in the forgetting of our deservedness, and the forgetting that we are loved and cherished beyond all measure. But more than that, in forgiving ourselves for forgetting that we are sacred, divine creators. We are the goddess version of the God consciousness, which means that as creators, we have the ability to create change. It's what we do, it's what we're meant to be doing. So if we have this ability to create and instead we are in submission, which is the only reason why we're angry and blaming others, right? We have allowed ourselves to be in submission. Once we forgive ourselves for that, meaning once we are simply aware of what we have done, we automatically begin the process of letting that energy go. Once we let that energy go, now we can be fully engaged in creating a new level of awareness, of consciousness, where we can consciously be on that self-love journey. So what self-forgiveness does, it actually creates a very keen inner vision. It's a wonderful directive for us, because when we start to recognize, oh yeah, I was in submission there, come back into my power, everything changes. Everything changes. So it's really, the Course in Miracles talks about every experience in life being one of two things, and that is either a call for love or an answer to the call. So if we can reorient ourselves so that we look at everything through those eyes, we recognize when we were in submission, it was a call for love. There's only one answer to reclaim our power, which is love, which is the creative life force. And so they go hand in hand constantly, but it's not to give us reason to beat ourselves up. It's an invitation for us to remember who we are and to reclaim our power. So that's how they're connected. And it's so powerful when we just remind ourselves of that. So with that, Ames, I would love for you to give us an example. I know you have a story you want to share with us, where a time in your life where self-forgiveness has really helped you to heal.
Thank you. Yeah, you're speaking, and I wrote down, can we just let ourselves off the hook?
Mhm.
I mean, can we just stop?
Give ourselves a break.
This is so counterintuitive of what we were taught. And when we like, oh, can we just let ourselves off the hook? It's just, have more joy in your life, have more ease.
Yes.
These are the higher vibrations of judgment, inner critic, um, shame, guilt, all these things. Can we just let ourselves off the hook and just be?
Yeah.
Right? I know we're gonna talk about this more and go deeper into our live Q&A after this if anyone wants to
Right.
jump in. um, could you put the link in? It's $5. We can go deep with you, Marcy and I, after this show, from 11 to 12 or 2 to 3.
Yep.
But I do just want you to also feel how your body responded to, can we just let ourselves off the hook? I mean, can you just give yourself freedom in that? I mean, it's powerful. Do you want me to put the link in, or?
Yeah, please.
So if you want to join us for the live Q&A, you can go ahead. We'll be putting this in. It's directly after this. You can there you go. It's in there. Go ahead and grab that. All right.
Okay.
So, it's interesting because many of us have complicated relationships with our parents, right? So, and you can do this with your ex-husband or the person you're with now or your wife or whatever, right? So, I took a moment. This was an exercise for me, and I took a moment in my life where I felt angst, and I felt ugh, and I felt like this thing towards my father, right? So there was this moment. It was at my grandfather's funeral. So you could take a moment. It was at my grandfather's funeral, and we're all on the stage. And my dad gives me a hug on stage. Now, I think that maybe is the only hug I remember from my dad. He was not like that. But in that moment of that hug, you know what I felt? Ugh,
Mm.
ugh, don't, this is weird. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable, right? Now, I have that moment in my mind. I have this moment in my mind that I could go back to and like, oh, that's how I felt. Now, I don't spend my time forgiving him in that moment. I spend my time forgiving myself because truly that is not me. That person who is like shut down. That's not who I am, right? That's not who I wanted to be or who I am today. And so I went in there and I forgave myself for that moment. I forgave myself for those feelings, how I felt. I forgave for my reactions because that the contract is with me. Like the contract is with me, right? And I'm not saying I should have reacted different. That's not the point. The point is that that's not who I actually am. And that's really the heart of me was so closed up in that moment that I just could hardly feel anything. And so I went in there and I actually went in and forgave that moment and to that little girl, so that to reconcile that, to have no guilt about it, to have no shame about it, to have no judgment about it, and to just give her understanding, put some grace in there, and know that that's not me, nor that's not who I want to be. So many of us can look back in these areas of our life, like even like our marriage, where we're someone who's abusive or cheating on us. We keep going back. We keep going back, or we accept the unacceptable within our relationships, right? The micro abuses, the anger, or maybe it's even us doing it. But go back in those moments and really forgive yourself for those moments of acceptance, like you talked about, Marcy, how we accept these moments in our life or accept conditions in our life that actually our higher vision, it's not in our higher vision to be like that. It's not in my higher vision to be closed off in life. My higher vision is to be open and to be loving. So that's one story, and there's many others, but I think that was the most impactful story of self-forgiveness that I've really gone through, like forgiving myself for being that closed off person in that moment.
Yeah, really powerful.
So let me ask you, so what happens when we forgive ourselves? What can we experience?
So you had actually mentioned something earlier on about, some of the things that we start to experience. But what I have found almost universally across the board, and I work a lot with, helping women to forgive themselves. And what I have found is that there is a sudden release of that weight that can only be described as pure freedom. It is a lightness of being, almost to the point of giddiness. And I have to share this story. As you were talking, I'm thinking, oh my God. So when I decided to leave my marriage, leading up to that point, I have to tell you, I was a mess. I remember on many an occasion, like just lying on the floor sobbing. I couldn't believe I was doing this. And of course, I tried everything. I was bargaining with God. Don't make me do this. Isn't there some other way? All of that. And then I finally cultivated the courage to do it. And at that point, I want you to know that for me, it was a matter of life or death. I felt like I was dying in my marriage. My body was withering. It was falling apart. I had all of these medical issues. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of of the night with these recurrent nightmares. I couldn't find my wedding ring. I've shared that before, which of course they were panic attacks, right? But I was in this constant state of such hyper stress and hyper alertness for anything that I would need to protect myself from. So I was really, you talk about living on the edge. I was living on the edge. So I finally got to this place where, as I said, I had cultivated this courage, knowing that it was do or die. And I remember saying to my husband that I wanted a divorce. And I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. His first response to me was, I will destroy you. And I started to laugh. It was my response. I just laughed. In that moment, I felt this sense of freedom. Now, you can't explain that, right? So here I've just been told I will destroy you. And trust me when I tell you, that was his intention. Okay. And I knew this part of his personality. And I had every reason to believe that he was going to pull out all the guns. And yet, this response was, and the response came from this energy of lightness. And then I'm going to tell you what happened. I went into this period, like I said, of pure giddiness. Anytime anyone would ask me, how are you? What's going on? I would be like this, trying to, you know, trying to prevent myself from smiling. And I remember running up and down the stairs and feeling giddy. That's how light I was. And it came from that impact of releasing the weight of the shame, the guilt, the shouldn't, the couldn'ts, what will people say? How will I destroy their lives? How will they be disappointed in me? How can I do this? To forgiving myself for ever believing that my right to be happy and healthy and whole was the most important thing in my life. That's what I had forgotten. I had forgotten that I am this divine creator who has the ability to create all of that. Why was I settling for living on the edge, living on these eggshells, and the bottom of my feet getting shredded because of them? My heart so heavy. Like, in that moment of letting that go and claiming my birthright to be happy, to be healthy, and to be whole, and to be a full expression of who I was. It was like I became a balloon. It was incredible.
I never heard that story.
And that's what I have found that everybody experiences when they finally let it go. It's incredible. Just incredible.
Well, he was not on Team Marcy, put it that
He
way.
was not on Team Marcy.
I mean, if that tells you anything in that moment,
That's right.
he was never on Team Marcy.
Never on Team Marcy.
And let me tell you, if they're not on Team Amy or Team Kim or Team Miriam or Team whoever,
they don't belong there.
They don't belong there.
That's right. That's exactly right. So having said that and sharing that part of my story, Amy, what role does responsibility play in self-forgiveness?
Yeah, man, responsibility is one of my favorite things. I used to not like it. But
Yeah,
when we really go into, it's our responsibility to heal ourselves. It's our responsibility to make choices. It's our responsibility to absorb what's happening to us.
that's right.
You know, it's really our responsibility. And, you know, I was talking about this the other day that, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow when you are in certain states of helplessness, victimhood, uncertainty, right? To really think to yourself that you are actually responsible for your life, right? And when we become responsible for our lives, are the stewards of our lives. I mean,
Yeah,
what a beautiful responsibility to self, right? This is like a beautiful responsibility to self, to be our own stewards.
yeah.
Because let me tell you something, like what Marcy just shared. People will not be on your team
Mhm.
if you're not on your team.
That's right.
Okay, you're the one. As soon as you go off of your values, as soon as you go off of your knowing and instead go into this judgment of self that leads to self sabotage. Okay, now which comes from not healing yourself and forgiving yourself and going through this process of compassion for yourself. Okay, because these are the when we talked about the quote in the beginning, the ethics of our own lives, to be the stewards of our own lives, to to be on our own team first, because yeah, people will take advantage of us if we do not. And the self-healing journey, this self-forgiveness journey, is imperative. It's
Yeah.
so important because we have to love ourselves. Like Marcy said, we have to love ourselves in a way that we respect ourselves, that we believe in ourselves, that we really like honor ourselves. Like no one taught us how to honor ourselves. We were supposed to just do everything for everyone and fall in love with Prince Charming, and he'll take care of us, sisters. He'll take that Prince Charming will do everything for us and take care of us. That is, I mean, we were sold a wrong bill of goods.
Mhm.
And so, as you think about responsibility, right? And I know it's hard sometimes. You're like, God, I'm responsible for that too. It's so exhausting,
Yeah.
right? This is where it starts. It starts as exhausting.
Mhm.
It starts as frustrating. It starts in this area of turbulence. But what happens is, and this is what happens with forgiveness, is self forgiveness, is that growth happens through self forgiveness, and responsibility revolves, evolves, I should say, evolves as you evolve into, of course, I'm the one responsible for that. I mean, this is such a powerful word. And, if you can take that word, responsibility for self, and really create a vision around that word of like, whoa, that means I get to really decide, right, what I want to do, who I want to forgive, if I want to even forgive them, right? I get to decide if that's good for me or not. I'm not beholden to anyone. The other day I said, look, I'm not beholden to anyone. I mean, what? That was like truth.
That
I'm
is
gonna
truth.
I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do what I feel like I want to do. I mean, that to me is such a powerful stance.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let yourself off the hook, and you're not beholden to anyone. It's you, and if you have Mother God, God, universe, or whatever, fine, right?
Yep.
So think about that
True.
responsibility and what you get to do with it and who you get to be.
That's right.
With that, I'm going to ask you, Marcy.
Yes, darling.
So, what is one thing everyone experiences once they have found forgiveness or self forgiveness?
Yeah. So I described before the sense of elation, the sense of elation. And with that, of course, is this sense of freedom. Okay. And again, it's something that rises up from within you. It's not anything that's coming from the outside. It's a very unique experience. But here's what else happens: the moment that we are courageous enough to make that choice filled with self love, to forgive ourselves for having forgotten who we really are, we suddenly have access to who we really are. So for me, what happened was, oh boy, this just came up. Um, I remember shortly before I had asked my husband for a divorce that I was like in a fog. I found that I was having confusion. I remember driving down the LIE and losing vision, my peripheral vision. And I had never had migraines or anything like that before. And all of a sudden, I was getting, these distortions of energy all around me. And it was pretty scary. And I went to see a neurologist, and I'm sitting in his office, and I happen to know this guy. We were, part of the medical community. And as I'm sitting in the office, anticipating my conversation with him, I could feel myself getting very anxious. And I got in and I'm, describing what I was experiencing. And he said, well, Marcy, we have to make an appointment for a brain scan. We have to do this. We have to do that. He said, you could have some major issues here. And we have to get to the bottom of it. Well, I'm telling you, in that moment, you know how they say, slap you silly? That was the way I felt. It was like, snap out of this, girl. And I thanked him. I left and ripped up that prescription as fast as I could. And I said, what are you doing? And this is not to downplay anybody else's symptoms or having real medical issues. But in that moment, I had what we call a come to Jesus moment. I knew immediately that was not real. Whatever I was experiencing was connected to those recurrent nightmares, panic attacks, to the digestive problems, to the headaches, to the walking on eggshells, to the fear that I lived in. I knew it immediately. And so, again, it was such a huge step towards self love that, think about this, in that instant, because I was willing to see things differently, I suddenly had access to the truth. I didn't have access to that as I was going into the office. I only had access as I claimed for myself that willingness to love myself enough to not follow what somebody else was telling me, but instead to really accept that this was all being created because I was in the wrong place.
Mm.
And that I suddenly had this whole panoramic view of what I had been experiencing and what it was trying to tell me. And in that moment, I had access then to the true information that my body wanted me to know. Well, what I want you to know also is that since that time, as I have continued to just feed my vibrational frequency with light, I continue to have access to this information that's just waiting to share itself with me. And that's what happens. Every step along the way, and I have God bumps now. Every step that you take in your self-love journey, that you show up for yourself and you're willing to look at the truth, which means, like Amy was saying, taking responsibility for yourself, willing to know that truth and to take action aligned with it, you will have access to information not only about yourself, but a whole panoramic view in terms of how the universe works.
Mm.
I can't describe this any other way other than to tell you it's actually an awakening that happens because you have aligned in that moment with your godliness, with your own divinity, your worthiness, and of course, all the reasons why you should be loving yourself. Profound stuff that we're talking about here.
Mm. Yeah, and it's like that moment. We've all had those moments, ladies, right?
Those aha moments.
Those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think gets in the way of self-forgiveness, Aim? And how does it impact a person's life if they keep ignoring and if they don't take the responsibility?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because with self-forgiveness, without self-forgiveness, there's anxiety, the fear, the guilt, the shame, right? And let me tell you something about us women is that because of the way we were raised and where we live and our environment and what we were taught, our need to feel safe is very important.
Yes.
Safety in a woman's life is very important. Whether it's like I still, after conditioning of, make sure you have your keys in your hand as you walk to your car.
Yeah.
Right? So we're look in the back seat, we're always told we weren't safe, right?
Yeah.
And so when our body, of course, it oftentimes are in these high level of anxiety, fear, caution, watch out, we're in this state. And just like you are in a fog, you call it a fog, which leads oftentimes to brain fog because of all of the cortisol and everything going through our body, nightmares, our overthinking, our inner critic, all these things from our head and and living in our body. We feel this weight in our body.
Yep.
That it's very difficult to to make decisions, heartfelt decisions, heart-centered decisions, or decisions that are really best for you in that high anxiety state.
That's right.
It's very difficult. Okay. And, Marcy got slap in the face. She snapped out of it. Right. And sometimes we don't get that slap in the face.
Yeah.
What we get is these small opportunities, to create more ease in our life, right? To create more responsibility in our life that actually clears that space. What happens is when we look inwards and we focus on what's happening inside, it calms our body down. Because what happens is we understand there's certain truths in there that are talking to us all the time that we oftentimes ignore, and point the fingers outwards. Okay. So with self-forgiveness, when you're going in and you're like examining your behavior, examining your choices, examining those small moments, like I talked about that moment at my grandfather's funeral, these small picture moments that we hold on to why we are the way we are, or these picture moments of why we can't have what we want. It's because of that. Self-forgiveness cures all of that. Because you're going inside and you're like, whoa, what was that moment actually about? You know, why did I accept that type of behavior, like abuse, like words of hate or words of abuse? Why did I stay in that relationship when it was these words that were coming at me were very angry and they did not even represent me? You know, when you're with people and they're
Sure.
telling you who you are and you're like, I don't know. That's not me.
Yeah.
Right. But we've all been there, right? Someone telling you who you are. And it's not in a good light.
Right.
It's not in a good light. And then you start trying to defend yourself, which is ridiculous. Right. Taking those moments and going in like, wow, what was really going on with me? And why did I actually acquiesce my power? Why did I give it up? Why didn't I like be on my side in those moments? What was I trying to get? What was I trying to achieve? Right? What was I trying to make happen that I went off of who my core self and who I am? And I gave it away.
Yeah.
What was I trying to do? Right? Because we must reconcile those moments with ourselves, especially if you have those pictures, you know, in your head around these certain moments that stay with us. Luckily, I don't have a great memory, but what a godsend. But I do have certain moments of like, dang, why did I choose that?
Sure.
Because when you go in, it's like Marcy said, you get all that. You get freedom, we get peace, we get compassion, we learn how to be more empathetic and compassionate towards other people so our life is not taken out by other people. So I think we're going to move ahead. We're at 4 minutes.
Okay.
So
We'll do a quick round.
All right. So, okay. Once self-forgiveness is achieved, will we have to do it again?
Yes.
Do it again.
This is a never-ending commitment. And it is a commitment. It is a commitment for you to, on a daily, hourly, minute by minute commitment, to be the greatest expression of you. That's what you're doing here. To be the greatest expression of love, the creative life force energy. And so self-forgiveness is something that we actually participate in all the time. It's the moment you start to feel yourself contracting. It's the moment that you start to realize that you were just diminishing yourself, or that you were not telling the truth, or that you couldn't receive something, or that you were not aligned with your belief and your action. Every single moment like that requires our self-forgiveness. That's it. And what are we actually saying? We're saying we're willing to let go of that brain fart and just come back into alignment with the truth of who we are. I don't need to acquiesce for anyone or anything. I am who I am. And I'm here. And am here with such a level of conscious commitment to be who I am and to be in service to myself and to others, that I'm in this constant process of recognizing if I'm unaligned, and I bring myself back. Unaligned, bring myself back. Now it's boom, 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 because I'm very practiced at it. And so, Aim, what do you think the benefits are of forgiveness?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it. You're hitting all the benefits, and you know, it's very, what we're describing are they're like very intangible things, and it's hard oftentimes
Yeah,
to communicate the journey, or to to understand the benefits of it, which are, I mean, I don't know, maybe you could see it in Marcy and I. There is a freedom, there is a like, fuck it kind of
yeah,
attitude. Look, this is like, this is who I am. I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to experience life. I'm in a loving way as much as possible. I'm here to explore. I'm here to, you know, really love myself. You're right. I mean, it's ridiculous how we have to be reminded that we are divine beings. We are here. We don't have to make excuses for being here. We don't have to give away our power to anyone. I mean, to even say that out loud is kind of like, do we still have to be saying this?
yeah,
Yes. Yes, we do. And I will tell you that, if I look over my life, like, there are certain things that I accepted that I would not accept today. Okay. There's just no way I would accept it. And a lot of that comes from forgiving myself in those moments that, yeah, I accepted that type of life and behavior. And it's not about being perfect. And we're going to have to keep going back over and over and over again into self forgiveness. And I don't say it like it's a damning thing. I say it like you get to, because you
that's right.
discover yourself. You honor yourself. We go into honoring,
That's right.
discovering, curiosity.
Well, I think we're at our mark,
Yeah,
Aim.
yeah.
Yeah, we've really covered a lot of ground. I want everyone to know we're here. After the show, if you want to hop in and talk to us. But Amy and I are also going to be inviting you to join us for a live workshop
Mhm.
where we have ritual and processing that we want to share with you so that you can learn how to do this very quickly as well, and do it from a place of heart centered intent. So we don't have that link yet, but we will. So watch your email for it. But again, if you want to join us in just a few minutes and talk with us, we're happy to be here for you. We also want you to know how much we love and appreciate you. And I, it just fills our heart so to know that, number one, that you recognize us. We are seen and heard and known in your eyes and in your heart. And our commitment is to offer the same to you, to be seen and heard and known in our hearts. And we so appreciate your loyalty and commitment to supporting us in our work, and for being here for us as we are for you. So thank you so very much.
This has been a good one.
Yeah, it's been great. So much love to you, and we'll see you all um, hopefully at the workshop, and also third
Next month.
Thursday of November,
Yeah.
which is right around Thanksgiving, isn't it?
Yeah. And in the
Yeah.
replay, to get the replay, there's going to be our free gifts in there, and it's
Yep.
going to be your the Trinity. Are we doing that now or in the email?
Either one. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. You want to talk about our sponsor?
Yeah, our sponsor is Trinity Travel. You can get up to $100 off of your hotel room, which I use. I say this. I've used it once before. I'm gonna put it in the chat in case you want to go ahead and grab that. Yeah, if you're going into traveling anywhere, or future traveling, you can book your get $100 up to $100 off of each hotel stay. And I think they have smaller hotels, and then they have the bigger hotels also. So I think you could find someone, and in Europe, I mean, all over the world, you can get this. So I highly recommend it.
We want to thank you also for your wonderful comments in the chat. Kim
Mhm.
says, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for today's topic. And we are so grateful for you to be here. We can see you're very busy and you're running off. Miriam also, this is so good. I'm not feeling well, and this has made me feel better. You're right, Miriam. She believes, as we do, that all disease and discomfort has a connection to emotional and spiritual misalignment.
Yeah.
So we have lots to talk about still next month. And again, if you want to join us in just a moment in our live chat, and then otherwise, please join us for the workshop. Like I said, we're going to be offering you some really transformative ritual and processes to help you to be able to work through this process on your own. And let's just all really show up for ourselves, okay? Yeah. So much love to you. Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone, and we'll see you next month.